Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for August the 16th. Today we are reading together in the text of 2 Samuel chapter 13. This is right on the heels of the unfortunate events concerning David and Bathsheba and the consequences that were laid out by Yahweh within that text can be found in 2 Samuel chapter 12 and verse number 10. Now, therefore, the sword will never leave your house because you despise me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. And we're going to see that unfolding here within the text. We're also going to see, I think, some of the consequences of poor decision-making on the part of David, going back to 2 Samuel chapter 3, where we read that David had a number of children by a number of different women, which is not something that he should have been doing as the king of Israel, and as any Israelite. It was not God's will for them to accumulate wives for themselves, especially kings. And we're going to see some of the issues that arise from that here within this text as well. So let's get the text on the screen and we'll read along together. I apologize if I'm sounding a little off today. My nose is a little stopped up, a little post-travel cold, it seems, but nonetheless, we are going to persevere. We're going to make it through this text today here in 2 Samuel 13. Honestly, not a fun text. It's not an enjoyable text to read whatsoever. It's very sad, in fact. Very unfortunate circumstances here. Lots of evil and wickedness are found here within 2 Samuel chapter 3. And yet, even such an evil and wicked text with so many failures leads us to some very important lessons that we will draw out after our reading. So let's read together here in 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse number 1. 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse number 1. Some time passed, and David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister named Tamar, and David's son Amnon was infatuated with her. Amnon was frustrated to the point of making himself sick over his sister Tamar because she was a virgin, but it seemed impossible to do anything to her. Amnon had a friend named Jonadab, a son of David's brother Shemaiah. Jonadab was a very shrewd man, and he asked Amnon, "Why are you, the king's son, so miserable every morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon replied, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." Jonadab said to him, "Lie down on your bed and pretend you're sick. When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Please, let my sister Tamar come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare a meal in my presence so I can watch and eat from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be sick. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to him, "Please let my sister Tamar come and make a couple of cakes in my presence so I can eat from her hand." David sent word to Tamar at the palace, "Please go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare a meal for him." Then Tamar went to his house while Amnon was lying down. She took dough, kneaded it, made cakes in his presence, and baked them. She brought the pan and set it down in front of him, but he refused to eat. Amnon said, "Everyone leave me," and everyone left him. Bring the meal to the bedroom," Amnon told Tamar, "so I can eat from your hands." Tamar took the cakes she had made and went to her brother Amnon's bedroom. When she brought them to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, "Come, sleep with me, my sister." "Don't, my brother," she cried. "Don't disgrace me, for such a thing should never be done in Israel. Don't commit this outrage. Where could I go? Where could I ever go with my humiliation? And you would be like one of the outrageous fools in Israel. Please speak to the king, for he won't keep me from you." But he refused to listen to her, and because he was stronger than she was, he disgraced her by raping her. So Amnon hated Tamar with such intensity that the hatred he hated her with was greater than the love he had loved her with. "Get out of here," he said. "No," she cried. "Sending me away is much worse than the great wrong that you've already done to me." But he refused to listen to her. Instead, he called to the servant who waited on him, "Get this away from me." throw her out and bolt the door behind her. Amnon's servant threw her out and bolted the door behind her. Now Tamar was wearing a long-sleeved robe, because this is what the king's virgin daughters wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the long-sleeved robe she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away crying. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has your brother Amnon been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." So Tamar lived as a desolate woman in the house of her brother Absalom. When King David heard about all these things, he was furious. Absalom didn't say anything to Amnon, either good or bad, because he hated Amnon since he disgraced his sister Tamar. 2 years later, Absalom's sheep shearers were at Baal Hazor near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. Then he went to David and said, "Your servant has just hired sheep shearers. Will the king and his servants please come with your servants?" The king replied to Absalom, "No, my son, we should not all go, or we would be a burden to you." Although Absalom urged him, he wasn't willing to go, though he did bless him, though it seems David did bless Absalom. "If not," Absalom said, "please let my brother Amnon go with us." The king asked him, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom urged him, so he sent Amnon and all the king's sons. Now Absalom commanded his young men watch Amnon until he is in a good mood for the wine. And when I order you to strike Amnon, then kill him. Don't be afraid. Am I not the one who has commanded you? Be strong and valiant. So Absalom's young men did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded. Then all the rest of the king's sons got up, and each fled on his mule. While they were on the way, a report reached David. Absalom struck down all the king's sons. Not even one of them survived. In response, the king stood up, tore his clothes, and lay down on the ground. And all his servants stood by with their clothes torn. But Jonadab, son of David's brother Shemaiah, spoke up. My lord must not think they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, because only Amnon is dead. In fact, Absalom has planned this ever since the day Amnon disgraced his sister Tamar. So now, my lord the king, don't take seriously the report that says all the king's sons are dead. Only Amnon is dead. Meanwhile, Absalom had fled, and when the young man who was watching looked up, there were many people coming from the road west of him from the side of the mountain. Jonadab said to the king, "Look, the king's sons have come. It's exactly like your servant said." Just as he finished speaking, the king's sons entered and wept loudly. Then the king and all his servants also wept very bitterly. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. After Absalom had fled to Geshur and had been there 3 years, King David longed to go to Absalom, but David had finished grieving over Amnon's death. And that is the reading of 2 Samuel chapter 13. Again, just a horrible chapter all the way around. I do not find but one redeemable person within this text, and that is the victim, who is Tamar. Now, you might have noticed as we read through this text, hopefully you noticed, it caught your attention, at least from what I could tell, just looking at my coloring, I don't see even the first line of yellow, which tells me that God is completely absent from this section of the text, which that alone should probably lead us to understand that this is not a good text whatsoever. The foundation of the text is that we have here David's sons. Again, going back to chapter 3 of 2 Samuel, he has 6 sons, I believe it is. He has Amnon, he has Chileab, he has Absalom, he has Adonijah, he has Shephatiah, and he has Ethream. All right. So these are his 6 sons by these 6 women. And we know as well that he is eventually going to get Uh, he's eventually going to get Michal, uh, Saul's daughter, back, though she has no children. And then we also see that he takes Bathsheba as a wife. So this brings it up to 8. David has 8 wives and multiple children by those 8 wives, which again is not the design that God had for his kings of Israel. So David here is mistaken. He's made a bad move in gaining these wives for himself. But among these children that David has, he has Absalom, and Absalom's sister is Tamar. So all these men here have the same father, which is David, but they have different mothers. So Absalom and Tamar they both have the same mother and father. They're full siblings. Well, then they have the half sibling who is Amnon, who has a different mother from Tamar, but he is infatuated with Tamar. He lusts after her. Yet the law expressly condemns marriage of half siblings. You can read that in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17. Expressly, there's no doubt whatsoever that this is a violation of the law of Moses for 2 half siblings to either have sex or to be married to one another. And it just tears him up. It absolutely just kills Amnon that he cannot be with his half sister. We have another character who enters into the story, and that is Jonadab. This would be, he's described here as a friend of Amnon. He's a cousin, actually, of Amnon. This says that this is David's brother, the son of David's brother Shemaiah, which would make him a cousin to Jonadab. It tells us that Jonadab was a very shrewd man. And I'm going to introduce something here that I don't know if you've ever thought about before. Don't know if I've really thought about it until I've been reading through here and doing some further reading and listening. And it seems that it's very possible that Absalom set up Amnon, took advantage of his desire for Tamar, and used Jonadab to put Amnon in this situation. It seems as if Absalom is somebody who wants superiority. And unfortunately for him, he is the 3rd child. There is Amnon, he's the firstborn. And then there's the second one, Kiliab, I think was his name. Kiliab, Kiliab was the secondborn. Don't hear anything about him. So maybe he's out of the picture now for some reason. Maybe he has died because we don't see Absalom doing anything, as far as I can remember, doing anything against him to try to usurp the throne of David. So it's very possible, it seems, and even just plausible from the text, that Absalom is plotting against Amnon to get him out of the way, and to do so in the most understandable way. Obviously, people would frown upon the fact of Absalom just straight up killed Amnon without being provoked in any way. So this seems to be him using his sister, using Jonadab, in order to set this up so that he would have some legitimate reason to be able to take out Amnon and have a more direct line to the throne. That's a possibility here. I'm not going to say that is absolutely true, or that's the way what was really going on, but that seems like something plausible here in this situation, because Jonadab, again, he's described as shrewd, and he's the one that sets all this up. He's the one that tells Amnon, hey, act like you're sick, get your father to send Tamar in, and whenever she's with you, then take advantage of her. And that's exactly what Amnon does. He takes advantage of his sister whenever she comes. His father David comes in, he babies him. David, I think for one part within the story, David just shows himself to not be a very strong father. He doesn't show a great deal of backbone here within this story. And I'm going to talk at the end about why that is the case, and a lesson we learned from that. But he just doesn't seem to really just hold his sons accountable and move them to position to take control of situations. Like, again, if I have a son who's just feeling down or whatever, I'm not going to baby him and say, hey, toughen up, get to feeling better. You don't have to have your sister come feed you. You can, just do something about it. Do something about the sickness. And yet he plays right into Amnon's hand. David does, sends Tamar in there. He sets it up perfectly whenever it's just him, whenever it's just Amnon and Tamar alone. He takes advantage of her and he rapes her. That's what the text tells us. He rapes her, and I know that's the translation of the CSB. I know there's some other texts that just say that he violated her, but in our modern vernacular, what he did is he raped her because he was stronger than her and he took advantage of her. Now, Tamar, to her credit, tried to fight him off, said, no, you can't do this. For such a thing should never be done in Israel. I think that's an echo from Dinah's story back in Genesis 34. Something similar was stated there as well. Don't commit this outrage. Where can I go if I'm humiliated in this way? Or you'll be like one of the outrageous fools of Israel. But then she says something, I think in verse 13, I think is very disturbing. She says, please speak to the king, for he won't keep me from you. That's not good. Her saying that here in chapter 3 or in verse 13, that's not good. It's not good that she has this view of David, that David would willingly give to his firstborn son his half sister in direct violation of the law. It's not good that she would think that. But that's what she says. Don't just take me. Let me be given to you if that's what must happen. But he doesn't listen. Amnon does. He takes her, he overpowers her, he rapes her. And then that sin, this grievous sin, is directly followed by guilt and shame, it seems. Because as much as he loved her, the text says that he hated her even more and just wants her to get out of his face, get out of here. Now, again, Tamar says, no, you've taken advantage of me now. You've disgraced me. It's your responsibility either to care for me or to pay the bride tax to my father. That's the responsibility now, is that if this situation happens, if you go back in the law, back to Leviticus or Deuteronomy, let's see here, Deuteronomy chapter 22, I believe it is, he would have to care for her, or he'd have to pay the bride tax. But again, he doesn't care. He has gotten what he wanted, and now he hates her. Again, this sin or this guilt and shame and just hatred follows the sin. He says, get her out of my sight. Get this away from her. Doesn't even refer to her as a person. Get this away from me. Throw her out. Bolt the door behind her. And Tamar now is so full of shame for what has been done to her. So unfortunate what has happened to her. Absolute sin and wickedness has been committed against her, that she takes these beautiful long sleeve garment that she's wearing. She removes the sleeves, puts ashes on her head, and she goes on from there. Verse 20, her brother Absalom said to her, has your brother Amnon been with you? How would he know that? How would Absalom know that? Now, it's very possible that Amnon's infatuation for Tamar was just public knowledge. He didn't do a very good job of hiding it. Or it's also very possible, I believe, that again, Absalom set all this up. That he is a very selfish, wicked, evil man himself, and he set up his sister to be used and abused in order to, again, give occasion for him to kill Amnon and to remove him from the step above him that he was as the firstborn. Also wonder, why didn't Tamar go to David in this moment? She goes to Absalom and said ends up being a desolate woman in his home, but she never goes to David. Again, I wonder why. I wonder why she didn't feel comfortable doing that. Well, verse 21 says that whenever David does find out about it, he's furious, but he doesn't do anything. And I'll pause there. I'll come back to it. Absalom also did not do anything in this moment. He didn't say anything to Amnon, either good or bad, because he hated him for what he had done in disgracing his sister Tamar. Verse 23 says that it's not until 2 years later that Absalom begins to work out his revenge. There's sheep shearing that's going on. If we go back to the story of Nabal and Abigail, we see the celebratory occasion that sheep shearing is. It's a sign of blessing from Yahweh, and that's what Absalom is doing. It is time for sheep shearing, time for celebration. He invites his father to come and his servants to come and to be with him. It seems that he's masking the true intentions. He doesn't just immediately desire for Amnon and others to come to him, but he first invites David, maybe to throw David off the scent, to think there's no issue going on here. David doesn't want to go. He says, fine, send me your sons. David's like, why? Absalom's says, just do it, let him come on over here to me. So he does that, and they all come, and Absalom has this plan in place. The plan that he has in place is for, as the meal is going on, and as Amnon is well drunk and is in good spirits, a good mood from the wine, Absalom was going to give a signal to his servants, his young men, and they were going to kill him right then and there. Quick, get the job done. He's alive, and now he's dead. And that's what they do. Once the signal comes, he kills them, or excuse me, they kill him. And at that point, the rest of the king's sons get up and take off. It says that each of them fled on his mule, which is a funny, just a funny thing to imagine, that they all just hop on little mules and take off running, which I don't know how fast a little mule can go, especially in our minds. Think of riding off of horses pretty fast, but these little mules just take off. Nonetheless, this report of what has taken place over here at Baal Hazor reaches David, and the report isn't exactly accurate. It says that everybody has been killed. All the sons have been killed. So David, understandably, is distraught by this. But then we have Jonadab, David's brother, or the son of David's brother, Shemaiah. He speaks up and says, "Oh, that's not what happened." My question is, how does Jonadab know that? Again, I think he is in league with Absalom. It seems to me that they are both working together here in this story, working together to accomplish something for themselves. He even says, Absalom has been planning this since Amnon defiled his sister Tamar. So this is all made very evident to David here in this moment by Jonadab. So Absalom also takes off, and the rest of the king's sons show themselves to not be dead. David is obviously happy for that, but he is still distraught over what has taken place. Absalom goes off to Geshur to be with his maternal grandfather, Talmai, the son of Ammihud. Remember that this particular Absalom's mom was one of the women David had married, it seems, for political reasons. We see in chapter 3, 2 Samuel chapter 3 and verse number 3, the third was Absalom, son of Maacah, the daughter of King Talmai of Geshur. So this would be the relative of Absalom's mother's side of the family. So he feels comfortable going over there. And David, having some sort of political alliances, probably doesn't feel the ability to just have him extradited back to Israel. So he has to let him be. So Absalom's over there for 3 years. And at that point, David now wants to be joined to Absalom again, because he's finished grieving over Amnon's death, and he's ready for things to be reconciled. But we're going to see how that plays out here in chapter 14, and then how that quickly gets turned on its head again in chapter 15. Again, these next few chapters going through here for a while is just very, very sad. Absalom's death takes place in chapter 18. And finally, in chapter 19, things seem to right themselves. But for a good chunk here, chapters 13 through 18, there's just a lot of really sad stories that take place, a lot of sad events, a lot of death, betrayal, evil and wickedness is taking place all throughout the story. Now, you might be wondering, though, as we think about some takeaways from this story, what's David doing here? Why is David, as the king, not stepping up and putting an end to all this? Why does he not say, no, this has to stop? Is it possible that it is his past sins that are keeping him from strongly rebuking the evildoers in this text and putting a stop to it all? Could it be that he doesn't feel as if he has the moral equity to be able to step up and say, no, this has to stop? Could it be that he feels as if he stands up and says, no, you cannot lust after this woman, that Amnon would turn to him and say, well, you deal with Auntie Bathsheba? Could that be the case? Possibly. Possibly David's just a weak father, like we see with Eli, who is unwilling to rebuke his sons for their evil. Whatever the case is, I want us to take away from this the need, regardless of our own mistakes. Just because we have made mistakes doesn't mean we have to allow others to continue to make mistakes as well. David, being the man after God's own heart that he is described as being, should have stepped up in this moment. He should have stopped all this. But again, we tie this into what we saw in the Bathsheba story, God said that the sword would never depart from his house. And it seems as if David is contributing that as well within the story. Just very, very sad story. Horrible things taking place, and it's just going to continue to snowball into further issues for David in the coming chapters that we will read together here over the coming days. I appreciate so much you tuning in for this reading today. A long reading, a long discussion. I hope it's been beneficial to you in your understanding of Scripture and just seeing how this story continues to play out in the life of David. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And look forward to reading along with you tomorrow. I'm looking forward as well to studying with everyone tonight at 7 p.m. Hope to see you there. Take care and God bless.